I'm working on this little red Jeep, and I'm doing a few updates to address some issues it had when I first built it. I'll show you the whole thing in another video, but today we're talking tires. Now, I mostly drive in the sand, so I need tires for sand use. Now, originally I threw those on here because they were cheap, and then I went to some stock ones. These are some stock size, aggressive mud terrain type tires, much like would have originally been on the vehicle back in the late 40s. And then I was thinking, old timers will always tell you that mud tires are terrible for sand because they dig in and you bury yourself and you can't make any forward progress. Whereas a smoother tire will just slip on the sand, not dig in, and it'll be easier to move forward. Now, this has been disproven by a number of testers and magazines, and they have scientifically concluded that that is not true, that mud terrain tires are the best thing for sand. Because as you spin them, they'll act like paddle tires and just throw the dirt behind you and you go forward. Now, the problem I have with that is they use new vehicles with new tires. And I'm not having any of that. I want to see what an old vehicle that's pushing very little horsepower, probably getting maybe 10 horsepower per tire at the wheel here. And if you have that little horsepower, will you really be able to use it like a paddle tire? Or will some old used tire actually work better? So now what I need to do is try out all these different sets of tires and test them in the sand. Let's go have some fun. Before we get started, let me tell you about each tire. These are my tires off my Suburban. They actually tried to get me to pay them to throw away my tires, and I wasn't having that. So I brought them home and repurposed them, put them on some Willys wheels, and that's the first set I used. Now I already know that those tires rub, and to eliminate any rubbing problems on that one or any of the other sets, I bought myself some wheel spacers. So these will move the tires out a little bit. I should have the clearance to be able to turn all the way, and that'll give us a good comparison of where you'll need to be for that size tire. So you can see how wide they are, a lot wider than stock, and only 3 of them hold air now. One of them had a slow leak, now it's a fast leak, so we got to fix that. Now next we have, these tires are probably from the 50s. My dad and his buddies built them in the 60s with used tires. They took a rim and cut out the center. You can see the torch cuts up close. Then welded another rim to it, put a regular old wide white wall tire on it, put a tube in it that stretched it to massive width, and ran these in an old MB. So I'm going to get this set going. Now I only have 2 left that hold air. These are still the original tires they built back in the 60s. And like I said, the rubber is probably from the 50s. And the 2 of them still hold air and are on rims. I've got one that holds air for a little bit, so I think I can get a test on. But I've got one that's just a bare rim. I'm going to have to put a tire on it, but I do have some leftover white wall tires, so we're going to try to make them match. Now, next contender, they are probably from around the late 60s or so, maybe early 70s, 10, 15 LT size on some wide rims. Now the problem with these is they don't actually fit a Jeep, but I'm not going to let that stop me, because the only real problem is that hole in the center is too small and won't fit over the locking hubs. So all we have to do is make that bigger. That should be easy. My final contender is a modern tire, well, 15-year-old used tire. It's a BFG mud terrain, and got a full set of 4 used tires I pieced together, and they all hold air. So, I mean, that's the ringer of the bunch right there. So, let's go get these tires mounted somehow and go play in the desert. This is my old set of tires. I did have 4 that held air for a while. 3 of them are still holding air. This one, the slow leak, became a fast leak. So it won't even last a few hours. So I gotta fix that. There is obviously a tire plug, maybe 2 of them sticking out this hole here. So that's a good possibility, but let's find out. Now I've got this dish soap and water mixed up in a bottle here. We're gonna spray the tire down. The most common places are around beads they leak a lot, and then obvious holes like this one. Yeah, we found our problem. Alright, gonna see if I can remove the old plug. Let's see what we got there. Alright, got a pretty big hole. So we're just gonna cram another plug in. Just pop a new plug in there and see what happens. Alright, I've done this a fair amount of time. There are better ways to fix it, but they involve taking the tire off the bead, and I don't want to do that right now. If I have to, I'll pop it out, put a patch on the inside, but this is the quick and easy way. Who knows, I may end up not liking the set of tires and go to something else entirely. I'm just going to throw another one in for good measure. That hole's pretty big. There we go. Now that feels like it might do something. So I'll give it a few minutes to dry. You're supposed to trim those off afterwards. I figure this is just to make more traction. Add a dash of air, new soap, and no big bubbles appearing. Yep, I think we got it. Nice. Alright, now on to these old rims that don't fit. Now, this center hole is the issue. You can see that one back there has a much larger center hole. It's pretty close to the lug holes. This one, much smaller. There's no way that's going over my locking hubs. So we need to make it bigger. Now, they're going to become 4 1/4 inches. There's a few ways of doing this, but I happen to have a 4 1/4 inch hole saw right here. So we're just going to pop a hole right through the center. Now, normally hole saws are guided off the pilot hole in the middle, and you don't have a middle there. So we need some way of holding this from bouncing all over the place. Normally, I would use an old brake drum for this and bolt the brake drum to the wheel and use the inside edge of the brake drum to guide the teeth. But I bought wheel spacers, and these fit just perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bolt the wheel spacer to the wheel and use that as my pilot to put that hole saw right through where it needs to be. Easy. Okay, so what we've got now is a perfect drill guide. Now, a couple of words about using a big hole saw like this. You may not be aware of this already, but there's a certain speed you don't want to go past in these saws. They start overheating and they just melt off the teeth. So don't go full speed on your drill. They're meant for a lot higher speeds. This one happens to have a low range on the drill, so I'm going to use that. And then oil. Make sure you get it, keep it lubed, because you're going to have a lot of friction where this is going through that pilot. And you don't want to be cutting away the pilot, you want to be drilling the hole. So, that being said, we're going to have our hole there, lube it up, and I'll just reapply oil as I go. And away we go. I usually do this with it standing up. Makes it easier to hold it centered. This isn't the easiest thing on a drill, and these little lightweight modern ones with their LiPo batteries, they've all kind of sensors that basically shut it down as soon as you try to do real work with it. So I'm going back to my old DeWalt, we don't care what you do, we'll break your arm but keep going type drill. See if that does a little better. Yep, turn off the clutch. Yeah, apparently I blew up this one too. I might be a bit hard on drills, who knows. Let's find another one. On to the next drill. Well then. Well, while waiting for batteries to charge on this one, let me show you the next tire we got to work on. This right here, it's one of those double wide rims. Now, there's a regular rim on this side. They cut off the lip, which would have been here, took another rim, cut out the center section, cut off the lip, and welded the two together. So that seems perfectly fine to me. I see no problem with that. The one thing I've got to figure out is how to get a tire on here. Now I do have some old wide white wall tires that actually match. The problem I see is a tube. I don't know what size tube to use. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do on this, but we'll give it a try. First thing, I'm going to clean up some of the rust so that we can actually see what we got going on there. Alright, well, this is what it looks like without as much rust on it. Now you can see, here is where it was welded up. Maybe you can't see that, let me bring it closer. This is the area where the valve stem for the second rim was welded up. You can see the weld bead down it. Looks like it was done with a torch, which is totally fine. There's the one valve stem hole left. There's some pores in here, so it definitely needs a tube in it. And anyway, that's what we got. Double wide rims. We'll see what we can do with those. Here we have the wide white wall tire that I'm going to try to put on this rim. Now the question is, will that tube actually blow up to that size? I have no idea. So let's find out. This definitely stretches some, but we're nowhere close. I think I'm going to need a bigger tube. So, out with the little tube. That is the correct size. What I have here is a tube from an old Humvee tire. So this is way too big. We're going to see what happens. And that leaks. So we're quitting for today. We'll pick up again tomorrow. After thinking about it, I remember I have some more tubes. This one is a 12, 50, 15, or 16 tube. So this actually might be the right one, just for a tire 1250 wide with a 15 or 16 inch rim. So we're going to see. I rinsed most of the dirt off it already. We're going to see if it holds air. Feeling air come at me. And I got a hole there. That's not too big of a deal. There's paint stuck to it. Left this outside for a little too long. That's the only hole I see. So, we're going to address that. Tire's deflated, it's dried off, I've scuffed the area. We're going to try putting a patch on here. Now with rubber cement, you don't want to do a big glob. You want to sort of spread it around a bit. Make sure everything's sticky and let it tack up a little bit before you actually stick the patch on there. Filling up our foil. This is tacked up nicely and stick. Now I'm going to let that dry a little more and go back to that other tire and drilling out that hole. I've given up on all my cordless drills, going with the right tool for the job, the big old low-speed half-inch drill. And I've blown up my arbor. Apparently, the threads on the arbor are spinning inside the hole saw. Huh. Well, now we can fix this. The arbor is just spinning inside. So, let's see if I have another arbor first. Okay, I did have another arbor. This one is one that was missing the pilot bit, but I kept it anyway, and now I'm glad I did. So let's see how this works. Someday I'll actually make this hole. Ah, there we go. There. We've done it. We now have a straight bore. There's the piece we took out. That's hot. But Now we can mount this to the Jeep. Now I gotta do the other ones. Now let's see if this patch holds up. So far, looking plausible. Definitely a lot bigger tube than this tire was meant for, but I think we're getting it there. It's on. Now to get the tube, get air in. Got a clamp on tire chuck. I think I'm going to attach this and stand far away when I do it, because this doesn't look safe at all, even for me. Alright, I've got to slowly oozing air in here. So far, it actually is kind of looking plausible. Alright, I'm going to just brace it up here so I don't have to be near it. And we're going to add air and see what happens. Alright, I was putting way too much pressure on these, so I'm going to add a little of that soap and water as a lubricant and try inflating again. Now I got 20 in there, but it's not popping on the beads, and I don't want to go much higher. So I'm going to try driving on it and see if that'll squish the bead out further. We'll see how that works. Now we get to play in the dirt. We did rain last night, which is unusual here, so there's some moisture in the sand, so we're going to have to take that into account. These will probably work better with moisture in the sand than they would if it was totally dry. But I'm not going to waste a day playing in the dirt just because it's wet, so we're going. Now I'm going to do two tests. I'm going to do a straight line run on level ground in two-wheel drive to see how this does in digging in. And then I'm going to go to one of those hills and hit that in low range four-wheel drive and see how far I can make it up. And I'm pretty sure I can make it up without a problem on any of the tires in high range four-wheel drive because of the momentum. But in low range we'll get a better idea of what the actual digging power of the tires is without having a lot of speed up to it. So let's go ahead and get started. things I want to mention. First off, that bead still isn't popped on, but it's holding the air fine, so I'm just going to drive on it anyway. That's the tire that doesn't hold air very well. I have my portable air tank here, made out of an old compressor, so I can fill that up right away before I test. This is an old sprint car tire. No tread at all, really, except for a couple of little notches there. Anyway, the other side's looking good. That's the side that held air already. We're good there. Nice proud white wall there, so that's just classy. Quite honestly, I'm really surprised with that result. I even had to try it a couple times and let it roll backwards and take off, and it just went right up the hill. Way better than the stock tires. Let's see what happens with the next ones. honestly, that ending surprised me. I expected these BFG tires to just walk away from the rest and be by far the best. But they're actually the second worst. So the ones I bought brand new and are the right ones for this Jeep, by far the worst. The ones I thought would be the best, second worst. The best ones turn out being the P-metric radials, which you can find anywhere, and if you have a tow vehicle, you're probably taking them off at some point. You'll have an old set. They're dirt cheap on the used market, and they work the best in sand. But that doesn't necessarily mean those are what I'm putting back on here, because a few sets worked well, and then the question is, which one do I want? Those P-metrics, they don't look good. They just, I don't know, they look like this is the best tire I could find when I dumpster dived at the tire store and they let me take them away kind of tires. And that worked fine when this Jeep was built as cheap as possible, but now I want it to look kind of decent. So I'm not sure what I'm going to put on. Let me know what you think. Which are the coolest looking tires? And I don't think I'm going back to those stock ones because they work terrible. I need it to work somewhat. But the rest of them work pretty decent. Even these BFGs, they're not as good, but I mean, they'll work better in rocks and stuff, I think. Maybe I'll have to do another test. Till next time, keep having fun. That was the end of the official tire test video. But if you're not doing anything else, I got something I want to show you. It's kind of funny the way things work out. I was going to try to figure out what to do with those little skinny tires. I had a set of them laying here against this engine stand, and I had an idea. I need to find a use for those that is not an off-road vehicle, because around here sand is everywhere, and I know they don't do well in sand. But I have another thought. With these two sitting here, I took a measurement between the two, and then I went on eBay, sorting by lowest price first, of course, and shortly, a little bit later, these appeared at my doorstep. 3-inch wide, 5 on 5.5 spacers that can be stacked. So what I'm thinking is dually plow truck. That could be useful. So apparently I got myself another project.